Well, political analyst Daniel Silke says the incarceration of President Zuma is not the end of history for the self-imposed malaise that the ANC has created. He says it must be part of a vital process of ethical and governance reform that requires consistent and clear leadership. Well, let me take you live to him now. Daniel, good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time. It's interesting how you are exploring this moment and where it fits in. And basically, you're saying that this is a problem that, or this moment rather, is a moment that has been created by the ANC.
Hello, Kathy. Thanks for having me. Well, clearly this is a moment that has been created, of course, by former President Zuma himself, first and foremost, but also the large support for President Zuma over many years, the inaction on him, clearly has led to this. So this is a making of the current state and the making of the current president. But I think the real issue here is that, this is an issue that goes well beyond former President Zuma. This really is an issue that should be part and parcel of a much greater renewal in South Africa, of ethical governance in particular. And if this is a catalyst, if this spurs it on, then I think it is a welcome sign that perhaps we're turning the corner in terms of governance.
We talk about a greater renewal, Daniel, and yet when we look at the true state of affairs in our country, perhaps even just the latest report on the state of local municipalities by the Auditor General is a good place to start. It's that our governance system is broken, even down to a local level. So how can this moment symbol a change towards a different direction?
Well, I think that symbolically it is important that you have a former president with the cachet and liberation history that he has now behind bars, even if it is for a limited period of time. And I think that does send out a message. I think you've had guests on earlier who've said that no one is above the law, absolutely, and that there isn't a political solution being offered to try and massage the path for former President Zuma. So I think these are important aspects of our maturing democracy that can also be applied to the many other wrongs within South Africa at the moment. Now, I agree with you entirely. The question, the jury is out, as I say, the jury is out on many issues. But the jury is certainly out on whether we can learn our lessons from this, whether the ruling party, the ANC, can understand that the people of South Africa are looking for substantial change and that the sky is not going to fall in if you take dramatic action at a leadership level in order to create better governance within South Africa. And one would hope that at least there's signals here that we can build on this.
When we look at it, the decision did not come out of the ANC. The decision came out of the courts of this country. In fact, the apex court of this country that has resulted in the imprisonment of the former president. Does that not change the conversation?
Well, I think it's important that the ANC themselves, as a former liberation party, have committed themselves to the rule of law. I think this is a testing and learning time for the ANC as well. And they also now have to understand that the buck stops here. Critical decisions have to be made in South Africa as to how we go forward. Do we allow a state of political anarchy? Do we appease key personalities who hold a certain cachet within the organization? Or, in fact, do we allow the law to take its course? And I think there's been question marks about that. There's been discussion over the last number of months, even the last few years, that perhaps there should be some blanket amnesty provided for those who've been involved in state capture or wrongdoings. At least it looks for the moment as though we are going to stand by the letter of the law, and at least I think that does show that the ANC is perhaps adapting to what is a new normal, not only for the rest of us, but a new normal for them as well.
And abiding by the letter of the law, Daniel, is something that one would have expected that the governing party would need to do. So I guess what I'm really trying to get to here is that the moment that what has brought us to this point has been legal process and not necessarily any action or inaction by the ANC in as far as it relates to its own position of its former president.
I think you're right that there's been legal process involved, but I think we've seen all sorts of manner of obfuscation by the ANC in relation not only to former President Zuma, but other senior members of the party. There are other senior members who have been kept on board by the ANC, who continue to hold relatively senior positions with question marks hanging over their head. And I think here is a case where the ANC is allowing the letter of the law to be used to send a political message within the ANC as a political party as well. So the law, in a sense, is being used here. I suppose President Zuma is at the wrong side of it on this particular instance, but I think the message goes into the actual inner workings of the ANC and how the ANC sees itself going forward as an organization that hopefully will become a lot more law-abiding and a lot more ethical. So the law ultimately, and unfortunately for President Zuma, the wrong side there, at least temporarily, even if it's for a few months, but I think it'll play into a different kind of milieu within the ANC going forward. But ultimately, the proof is in the pudding, and we'll watch the ANC carefully to see whether there is indeed substantive change over an extended period of time.
You've also pointed to the fact that this moment requires leadership, and another important word is consistency.
Kathy, I think leadership is critical in any environment. In South Africa, we need to, of course, move beyond the issue of former President Zuma, and we need to move into a new policy framework in this country that really addresses the key issues of economic growth on the one hand and inequality on the other hand. And you need firm policy decisions from the existing leadership and, I might add, from President Ramaphosa. So it's a holistic issue of checklist items that needs to be adopted here in South Africa if we are to take the message further and if we are to learn from the wrongs of our recent past.
Political analyst Daniel Silke, thanks for your time tonight on News at Prime. Let's leave it there.